Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have this Christmas card to share with you using some products from Purple Onion Designs, which are illustrated by Stacey Yacula. And actually I colored all these images for the coloring challenge where I talked about a while ago, which by now already ended a while ago because there were only 11 days, and if you are on Instagram you can always check the coloring there as well of each image. Today I am using 4 images on one card, but I am coloring the 3 different from what I did for the coloring challenge, just because the colors weren't really matching with the softer tones of the images of the critters. If you're curious to know which specific stamp sets I'm using today, I am listing everything down below in the description box, and there is also a link towards my blog. There I will also list all the colors I used for each image, because there are so many images on this card and so many different Copic markers. I just thought that it wasn't going to be really handy to just have a complete list of Copic markers without knowing what went where. So on my blog you can find everything for the squirrel, for the hedgehog, and so on. I just listed them per stamp set. Okay, so there is a lot of coloring today. I sped it up a bit, but yeah, of course, as you know, you are card makers, you are coloring as well. Coloring it takes a while. I'm also coloring on the Perfect Coloring paper from Transotype. It's a different kind of paper than Neenah. It has more gloss, but then again, in my opinion, I blend quicker on Neenah. With this paper I definitely have to add layers, but then an advantage of this paper is that I experience less bleeding. I can keep adding layers and layers without having my Copic markers run out and going outside the edges, except for when I'm just going a bit too quick and just and messing it up myself. But then there is a colorless blender, so no worries. But that's what I'm doing today. So I have like the need to add more layers to get my color where I want it to, but then again I have more wiggle room to get to blend perfect. Also, I'm not doing like a really crazy shadowing thing here, but if you wanna do like crazy shadowing with Copic markers, I definitely recommend this paper because you can just keep adding layers and layers. But then again, I'm also not an expert on Copic markers. There are so many people who are doing such a good job. I'm just doing what works for me. And yeah, what I like to do, and that's the most important thing. This is a hobby. I guess it's the same for you. You must enjoy it. Like, don't put too much pressure. Don't try to do something that is not you. You just need to enjoy it yourself, and you can always learn and get better and better. As long as you enjoy it, you're doing the right thing. Okay. So for today I'm just doing the easy coloring version of what I do. Also, you probably saw it, I started with my darkest and build my way up to my lightest. There are people who prefer having a base coat of the lightest color first and then go with the darkest and back to the lightest. It's just whatever is your preference, whatever you feel like the blending is helping, you just do that and it will be perfectly fine. As long as you are happy with the end result, then I think you're doing the right thing. There are so many ways to use Copic markers, so it's not because I'm doing something else that your technique isn't the right one as well. Okay, so for the rest of the coloring I'm going to put on some music. So there is also a bear that I'm going to color, and then a Christmas tree, and then I will be back to make a background with you guys and finish this card. Now with everything colored in, I had fussy cut everything, which I did. There aren't any dies. You can also use a scan and cut if you have one, but I don't really like the result that I get from mine, so I avoid it as much as possible. So yeah, I've cut them out, and now I'm going to start on the background. So for the background, I have taken a piece of Neenah, and I have die cut it using the basic rectangles by Mama Elephant. I don't have a lot of basics, but I do have that one, so I know that I'm using it a lot, but it's working, and I love the stitch detail. So yeah, I am covering the stitch detail as always with my purple tape, because I really like the white border that you have then. And I'm going to do some ink blending. So I took this My Favorite Things Drifts and Hills stencil, and I'm going to use some distress inks to ink up my background. So for the snow, I am using Weatherswood. It's a really soft gray, but I'm also dabbing off my brush because I don't want any harsh lines. I don't want it to be too dark. So that's why I am dabbing off the color. Then next up, I'm going to blend the sky, and therefore I'm using blues. So I'm going to do a traditional night sky scene, and therefore I'm using Black Soot, Chipped Sapphire, Stormy Sky, and in the end I will also take some Tumbled gloss to make the bottom a bit brighter, but only a tiny bit, because I really want the dark night sky to be there. So I'm just building my way up. I'm using Neenah. Neenah is less forgiving, definitely when you are using distress inks, the regular ones. With the oxides you have more wiggle room, but I prefer the regular distress inks. So what is key for me is to really build up the color. Don't go too harsh immediately, just build up layer by layer. You can better build up than having too much harsh lines on your background, and then you need to start over. So that's why I start really light, and I just keep adding and adding until I'm happy. So here I'm just adding a tiny bit of tumbled gloss. You barely see it, but I know it's there, and it's softening the bottom a bit more. Time to remove my stencils as well as my purple tape soon, because I'm going to add the sentiment. But before I can do that, when I remove the purple tape, I realized that a part of my purple tape wasn't stuck on there, and I blended a bit on my white border that I want to keep. So something that you can do is take your sand eraser. There are papers where you really see that you used it, but in this case with Neenah, I think it's more forgiving, so you barely see any scratches, or however you want to call it, when you use this sand eraser. So I was really happy that I used this paper. If I would have used Strathmore Bristle Smooth, I would recommend not using your sand eraser, but just taking a damp paintbrush and lifting up that color, because distress inks react with water, so you can just lift it up really easily. So I'm heat setting my panel again, because I'm going to do some heat embossing. So for the stamping, I'm going to show it with the sentiment. I have a piece of acetate, and I have this clear mounting stamp on my Misty already. I'm lifting up the stamp, and now I'm taking the piece of acetate, and I'm first going to stamp my sentiment using black ink, and then I can watch through the acetate and look at the squares of the Misty, and I see that I was really lucky. So I could just leave the sentiment like this. If it was crooked, then you can just tilt your card base. Like, for example, if you think it's tilted, then you can move your card base underneath your acetate until it's positioned perfectly. then you just add your magnet to your card base and then you can stamp again. So if that's the case, you really need to make sure that your acetate is still in that corner, and then you just wiggle around with your panel to get it straight. Okay, I think in my first card that I showed you, doing the complete scene, I think there I had to wiggle a bit with my panel, so I recommend watching that one. It was with no line coloring, so if you don't want to see that, you can just check out how I stamped everything out, but that might help you. So with my sentiment finished, I'm going to add all my images. I'm first going to add them, and then I will be splattering some white gouache all over. I want my white gouache to also be onto my images, so that's why I'm first going to adhere them, and then I can just easily splatter everything nicely. So I'm adding my images using liquid glue and thin foam squares from scrapbook adhesives. So now onto my white gouache. I am adding it to an acrylic block, and then I will add a little bit water to this gouache. I recently got a lot of questions about the gouache that I was using, because some of you are having difficulties with the white. When it dries, it sort of takes over the color from the background. I had the same thing with this gouache as well. What happened in my case was that I just added too much water. When you add a lot of water, it's easily to splatter it around, and I like that a lot. But if it's too diluted, it really let that other color shine through, which is not what you want when you want to create stars or snow. So really just add a tiny amount of water, just enough water to be able to splatter it around, not anything more. So sometimes you really need to tap hard, but it's better to have a minimal amount of water and maybe just add a bit more. But once you add too much water, then you will have that effect. So you don't necessarily need to buy a new gouache or white paint that you have. Try to use it, but with a really small amount of water. Okay, and I hope that might work. But even in my case, and lately I am really lucky with the white that is represented with my splatters. But I also had those cards where I had too diluted white gouache and it just would turn out blue in this case if there was too much water. So try it first, and if that really isn't working, you can always buy another brand or anything like that, but maybe it works for you as well, just by adding less water. So I'm adding now my glossy accents. The stickles is already on there, And once that's done, I'm going to add this panel really carefully onto a card base. I would recommend to first add it to card base, then add stickers and glossy accents and whatever embellishment you want to use. That's the safe route. But I was a bit excited and I wanted to finish the panel, so I just kept going, and then afterwards I thought, no. So yeah, once this is done, I am going to add this to a card base, and that's it for this card. So a lot of coloring and ink blending, but I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you can leave them down below. If you like this video, a thumbs up would be really nice, and I hope to see you back soon with another card. Bye!